Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Let's Get Together, a social club for seniors. And I am Heather, your host for today. And we are here in part because of grant funding from AeroCares by Lockheed Martin employees and also Hesta Stewart Christian Trust. We want to say an extra special thank you to those folks, but we also want to say thank you to Emily Corbin, who's leading us in FitWits today. And I know Emily knows what day it is. May the 4th be with you. So let me stop sharing my screen so Emily can lead us in some little brain game exercises, expand our thinking. And I'm going to make
Thank you, Heather.
Emily. There you go. You're all set.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. Yes, Heather, you and in our first group, well, everyone in our first group, two of whom are with us now, they were right on today's theme. You were on it too, Heather. So let's be FitWits. First page gives us away just a little bit always as far as what we're going to focus on. Y'all know I look for a theme every single time and something to just kind of guide us, even if it's a real loose guardrail for us. So Steve, what do you notice about this front slide here? Anything stands out at you?
The stars, the universe.
Yeah. You're on the right track. And that's all we need. That's all we need is we just start thinking about what about the universe? What about the stars? So today specifically is Thursday, May the 4th. Forecast, it's actually a little sunnier than it was when I typed all this out. I'm glad. But we do have a chance of severe weather today. Not too bad, 30%. So does the weather forecast match what you see outside, or is it off, or
no, it's overcast?
Does it match?
It's overcast. Yeah.
Dusty says it doesn't match. What's it look like there? It looks like it might be sunny where you are.
Yeah, I've got the blinds are closed. I never get over there, but it looks like the sun's out over here.
Yeah, the sun just started to peek out here too, and I'm happy about that. It is Mayfest, so you know it's going to rain, maybe even hail, because it's Mayfest.
Yes, they got. It says on the computer it's rain for the next 5 days. So. Yep,
that is a thing that tends to happen with the Mayfest. I remember some very muddy Mayfests in the past. But boy, howdy, it sure is fun to crack those confetti eggs. Thanks for reminding me about that, Penny. We're going to have to get over there and get some of those. So let's move on to our theme for today, which somehow is in the last slide. Not sure how I did that. May the 4th be with you. And so I know Dusty and Nan and probably Heather already are all over our theme for today. So if Steve or Penny want to tell us what we might be talking about today based on this graphic and based on that very first screen that we looked at.
Something about Star Wars.
It could have to do with Star Wars. And
well, the 4th of July.
Today's May the 4th. And so May the 4th be with you is something that everyone who's ever watched Star Wars, and many people who've never watched Star Wars
I didn't heard. Like it. I never have.
You didn't like it, and that's okay. You don't have to be a fan for today's theme to.
I fall into the category of them. Yeah, I fall into the category of people who've never watched it, but I'm familiar with the phrase.
Yes, Heather.
I'm in that bucket.
everybody.
Dusty is in that bucket too. What about you, Steve? Are you in the I've watched it and I like it, don't care much about it, or never even paid attention bucket?
I've watched it, but it's all right.
It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no matter how you feel about it, it's a vehicle for telling a story, and it's something that a lot of people get excited about. And you know what we're doing right now is really a vehicle for telling a story. And I like the kinds of interactions that are possible when we talk about stuff like this. So one of the things we did in our first session is we looked at some of the life lessons that come from Star Wars. And you know what? They're life lessons that you can find in many, many, many books and movies from all kinds of genres. It just so happens that today is May the 4th, so we'll look at some of these from Star Wars. In our first session, we talked about some of the things that make us different. This first kind of theme is embracing the things that separate you and make you stand apart from the crowd. And I know that, so Dusty's a baker and a musician, and Nan, you're a big time crafter and Girl Scout leader. You love animals. Let's have some of the others share some. Steve, I know some things about you, but maybe the group doesn't. So what's something that sets you apart? It doesn't have to be career related. It can be something about your personality or a preference of yours. Something funny. I don't know.
Well, I enjoy life.
Yeah.
I work with my hands when my brain and my hands allow it.
Mm-hmm.
With my leather work and my wood turning. Just joy being alive.
Yeah. And so you don't just work with your hands. I mean, you craft some incredible works of, I mean, I want to call them works of art. They're things that you can use. They're useful, but they're also just quite beautiful. Steve is right now making a briefcase. What? He's sewing and putting together from scratch a briefcase. That's not a project I would ever even contemplate attempting, and yet here you are, just, I'm just gonna make a briefcase. No big deal, right? What about you, Penny? What's something unique about you? Anything?
I think today. I'm not here because of my ear. Well, I have friends, I try to help them. The events coordinator is what I try to do here. I get her things, and then I'm try to get her copies so she can program events here.
Nice. So what I hear you saying is that you're a good friend, and you help people kind of make the magic happen. Yes. Right? You help to bring people together and get things done.
Yes.
Yeah, I think in our community here, we have so many of the parts that are really important for a good village, right? A successful village. Be loyal to your friends. We are that. We are loyal to each other. This one here, realize that others see the world differently than you do. This sparked such a great conversation in our last session. We ended up, I don't think we moved past this one. and we could probably spend an equal amount of time and not even talk about the same things that we discussed before. So I think it would be fun for us to move forward, though. It's never too late to turn things around.
Well, mistakes are learning lessons for us.
Mm.
And they're not failures. They actually help us succeed.
Yeah, it's like I love what you just said there, Steve, because like if a little child was learning to walk, but they'd never actually done it before, you wouldn't point at the child and say, "Oh, you're failing," right? They're learning, they're growing in this process of learning to walk, right? And that's really all any of us are doing any given day or situation, is that we're just learning to be better. Hopefully we're taking those opportunities to grow. But that means, unfortunately, we're going to get into situations where we wish we could have done better. No?
That book that I was telling you about, Undo It.
Yeah.
So it talks about the impact of stress on the neurons in your brain, and how we have these telomeres around our neurons to help to protect them. And the shorter our telomeres are, the more at risk our neurological structure is. And so there are different things that we can do to help to lengthen or prolong the length of our telomeres. And one of them is to be aware of how you respond to stress. And so there are life stressors that we cannot avoid, but we can, in a lot of ways, adjust how we choose to respond to stress, and we have control over that. And they referenced all kinds of studies about, people who were caregivers, or, in high stress occupations, or, going through some stressful, medical or healthcare situations, and their response to stress and the length of their telomeres, and as a direct result, the length of their quality of life and the years of their life. And so what you're talking about here just really coincides with that. It's like, how are you choosing to respond to the environment around you? And that has a direct impact on your overall quality of life and the length of your life. It's really, really good.
So I wonder, what are some of the things that we can do, like, and it's real easy for us to look at a situation and say, oh, here's what this person should do, right? And it's much harder for us to, in practice, actually do that in real time when things are getting stressful or tense. But maybe we could take a moment to notice or to just say, what are things that we can do to calm down our nervous systems when we're feeling like we're about to have a really stress-based response? I don't know. I think it's different for everybody, really.
The grand pad.
Just escape into the grand pad.
Yes, I get on there and play the games.
Escapism is definitely one way. It has a place.
Yes, it does.
What, sticking your head in the sand? Is that escapism?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Sticking the head in the sand almost makes it seem like hiding. And I mean, I think sometimes it's positive to just kind of walk away from, like, maybe putting our heads in the sand is actually good for us occasionally, not always.
I think it's good to just stop, step back, and breathe. In that moment of your real stress, just kind of just pause.
Yeah.
kind of pull back a little bit about the situation and just breathe. And that will kind of help calm down so you can understand and help work through the situation.
Yeah.
There's some situations that you can't do anything about.
Yeah.
So instead of pondering on them, I find interest in the game.
Right. So instead of letting yourself ruminate and worry about things that you can't change, you're just allowing yourself to move on to something different.
Yeah. Right. Totally.
That totally has value. And what about this message that it's not too late to turn things around? Like, what does that mean to you? Like,
well, I think the big thing, it's like, okay, I'm going to relate it to some of our life right now. Okay. We get the diagnosis of dementia in one form or another. And we can either shut down and die, or we can make the change to go on and keep going.
Yeah. And that is a choice, right? Getting up every single day and deciding today I'm going to choose to really step all into it, right? And each time you do that, you're creating more momentum toward that purpose and toward that goal. And maybe not turning things around for yourself, but maybe slowing down what we feel or think is inevitable, right? Maybe just allowing yourself to stay longer where you are. Say that again, Nancy.
One step at a time.
Seriously. My dad and his brother would say "Ofi Photo," and that stood for 1 foot in front of the other. And sometimes I really have to just trace those letters for myself. OF, 1 foot in front of the other. And just that little process of considering those letters sort of slows me down. It's a little bit like counting to 10. So we all have a version of counting to 10 or taking a deep breath and deciding to sit through something that feels intense or stressful. And it's just good to know, like, Dusty, what is that for you? What is something that you do when you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed out? Something that helps you to move past.
Well, I've got two things. We have a pool table downstairs that take out my aggression, and a guitar up here.
Nice.
Those two things.
Yeah. And Penny, what helps you when you're feeling like you need to give yourself a little care?
I have several friends I talk to on the phone with.
You can reach out to someone. Yeah. Human connections are powerful.
My brothers, and I have 2 brothers, but only one of them calls me, and I have 2 sisters, and I usually talk to them every day. And my friends are much older than me. I have a 94-year-old friend. My best friend went into a nursing home with Alzheimer's. She was a real smart nurse. And then my other friend's 94 and one's 101. Can you believe that? I have a 101-year-old friend.
Oh my goodness. That's inspiring.
But she still remembers me, her daughter says.
Awesome.
I talked to her daughter, text. I know how she's doing. 101, she'll be 102 this year when she makes it.
Wow.
And she has panic attacks about Cuba now.
About Cuba?
because she was from Cuba. She escaped out of Cuba.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe something coming up from her earlier life experience. Yeah.
The message. I sent her a message yesterday. I don't know if I got a return or not.
Mm.
She always tells me how she's doing. Sends me pictures.
So I'm gonna move us to a couple of quotes, and we'll get food for thought from the quotes that we got from some of those. So I'd like for you to just look at this list. It starts with number 1, and these are all things that the Jedi would say. So that would be like just the wise people in the community, right? Any of these that stand out to you? So should we read one? Should we read them, take turns reading? Would that be okay?
Yes.
I'll go first. Number 1, try not, do or do not. There is no try. I have trouble with this one.
Yep.
I have to say I've never fully either understood or agreed with it, but that's just me. But then again, I've never watched Star Wars, so I might be missing some context.
Well,
You don't have to have Star Wars for that. That's pretty self-explanatory there.
yeah, I
Uh,
think, Dusty, I want to hear more about what you think about this.
Well, it's, I'm drawing a blank here. Y'all just go ahead. I'll
Yeah,
come back
no
to it.
worries at all. Take your time. And Heather, I think in terms of a movie, it's and a very, a story that you can tell on paper. It's simple to say things like "Don't try, just do it," right? But then in real life and in real practice, it's a lot harder. This one could be problematic. Huh?
I said, I saw South Pacific this weekend. Am I on mute?
No, you're not. You saw South Pacific this weekend?
Yes, I love that movie. And you know what?
You enjoyed it?
Yeah, I really enjoy that movie. And she, at first she told Emil that she didn't want to marry him because he had 2 Polynesian children. She says, what's wrong with him? Because of the color of the skin and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he was a widower, and then at the end she decided, that she made a choice at the end.
Yeah.
And so did the young man that said he would marry the Polynesian girl. And he got killed. So she got left alone. So that's,
What was it? What made you think about that movie just now, Penny?
well, because you said, try not, do not, do or do not, like she said she didn't want to marry him at first because he had Polynesian children, the color of their skin. That's what she said in the show. So that made me think about that. You do not.
Because she was so definitive, it was either a clear yes or no. It wasn't an in between.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I can see that.
She did at the end decide, why should I decide because of the color of the skin? So.
And she did change her mind. So one of my favorites here is the one that I have highlighted. luminous beings we are, not this crude matter. I love the idea that we're more than just these bodies, you know, and the word luminous, I don't know about y'all, but it just kind of makes me happy. I love that word, what it makes me think of and what it means, full of light. I love thinking of all of us as being full of light. Let's look at number 4. Who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows him?
The person that follows him.
Yeah, it's a little chicken or the egg, huh?
Takes one way and half does the other.
Oh, such a baker's joke, right?
Yes, I agree with you.
Let's move on to another one. Oh, this is fun. The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
That one stood out to me. Yeah.
You noticed that one, Heather?
I did.
Heather, why does that stand out to you?
Well, there are proverbs in scripture. There are Chinese proverbs. There's all kinds of, wise nuggets that talk about the benefit of holding your tongue or listening more. You listen to, if you listen to hear, you don't listen to respond. All kinds of nuggets of truth that are widely accepted but rarely practiced. And when they're practiced, I think it's either taken advantage of or people see it in awe, but don't always accept the practice as a normal way of living themselves. It's just stood out to me.
Yeah, it reminds me of, like, just in watching stories, sometimes there will be a character who just sits in the corner and listens and maybe stays expressionless or doesn't really interact with the other characters, and everyone kind of takes that person for granted. And then towards the end, this character might come forward and surprise everyone with their abilities and their knowledge and their skills, because they were so quiet that they had this kind of sleeper impact on the storyline. So, and yeah, many of us remove all doubt about our intelligence when we open our mouths, right? We could.
I'm one. My mother always said, you learn more by listening.
Yeah. Well, and that makes total sense. If you just think about it, am I going to learn more by putting things out into the world, or am I going to learn more by taking in?
Who did you think of, Emily, when you read that? Who was the first person that came to your mind?
You mean number 10? The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, I thought of Helen Keller, actually, who to me is kind of like one of the prime examples of the sort of literal meaning of that quote. Yeah. Because talk about an incredibly intelligent, gifted human who didn't speak, you know?
Very unassuming. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's who came to mind. What about you, Heather?
My brain went to to scripture. There are a couple different proverbs about, holding your tongue, or even a wise man thinks a fool is wise until he opens his mouth, just stuff like that. My brain just went to scripture.
Yeah.
I'm curious about everybody else though, like who popped into your mind whenever you read that?
Can anyone think of an individual who remained quiet, and maybe people discounted that person, didn't think they were as smart or gifted?
Steve, did anybody come to mind for you?
Well, I had many students that were very quiet in class, and yet they were very, very intelligent, and I would rather them, be quiet and then have that nugget of wisdom than the continual talking. And they had others that would talk all the time, but they really didn't say anything of importance.
Yes, we certainly have many examples of that in the world. It's almost easier to think of those examples than it is to think of the quiet person who surprised you. I almost have more of a archetype in my mind than an actual person. What's that, Heather?
No, I was just going to say that. I was just going to say that I have my puppy dog with me, and this little girl was like, "Oh, doggy!" So it got me off track. Oh, I was just thinking that in our culture we have this desire to fill a void, and we're uncomfortable with silence. And so I think a lot of that skill is learned. Whenever you just are quiet and listen. If you live like everyone else does, or most people around you, they're spending their time talking.
Yeah,
definitely a learned skill.
We have so much stimulation. Yes, Dusty.
My mother always said, "Don't talk unless you got something to say." I knew what
sounds like a wise woman.
Certainly. And certainly don't say anything if you don't have anything nice to say.
Yeah, she said that too.
That was a good one also. Okay,
let's
look.
With the kids, we say, "Is what you said kind and encouraging?"
Yeah, I love that rule as a way of, is it true? Is it kind?
I've heard the phrase life-giving. Is it life-giving? Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things, Heather. Like luminous, life-giving. Put those in the same category of word combinations. Let's look at number 11. Difficult to see, always in motion is the future. The philosophy of Yoda, here it is. So this Jedi lived thousands of years according to the story, and difficult to see, always in motion is the future. It's almost like we are all.
You got to remember, Yoda said things backwards.
Mm-hmm.
So he's
So what's
basically,
backwards? Tell me
so
what's backwards.
he's basically saying the future is difficult to see.
Mm-hmm. And the way I read this, and the way I experience it, is that we're sort of living the future right now, every moment as it happens. And so it's really hard to get perspective on something while you're living it. Like if I put a bunch of lines on my paper and they're all really, really, really close to each other, and well, okay, that's a bad example. I need a big marker. But if you look at a graph, right, if you look at a graph and you look at all the tiny little things on the graph, it might look like there are huge spaces between them. But if you step way back and you just look at the big picture of the graph, you might see that it has a much more distinct shape than it did when you were looking up close. I feel that way about looking into our own futures or seeing ourselves into the future. I sometimes feel like I'm looking at all the little details of the day to day. It's harder for me to step way back and look at the bigger shape that my life might be taking. Does anyone have a different way of reading this or viewing this, or a different experience? We're getting seriously philosophical here, but
Well, basically, you miss the forest because you see the trees.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah. What does that mean?
Or the story of the explanation of an elephant by the blind people. You know, each one has a different part. An elephant's this, an elephant's this, an elephant's this, an elephant's this. Just because that's all they could feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that story go, Steve?
I don't remember how many, but it was like 3 or 4 blind people come up to an elephant, and each one, like, one touches a leg, one touches the trunk, one touches the tail, one touches this, an ear, and that they said, well, this is what an elephant's like. This is what each one individually.
Right.
Okay. Because they don't have the big picture.
They don't have the big picture.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I don't know exactly what I'm saying here, so just be patient, please, a minute. Sometimes we get so caught up in the little day-to-day minutia, we don't see the big picture of life. That can happen in many ways. We get caught up in the medical issues of whatever we're going in. We don't see the big picture of life. You know, just all sorts of things like that. You know, and the life future is still going to keep going, no matter what.
And it's moving fast, right?
Yeah, it's still going to be there. You know, tomorrow's still going to be here.
Despite your understanding of it, it's still gonna happen. Yeah.
Tomorrow will still come even if I'm not here. Let's put it that way. Okay. So,
or even if you don't feel ready for it.
Yeah. No.
Right.
Yep.
It's moving fast. What was that, Nan?
Live for the day.
So this reminds me of some of the things that we talked about in the beginning, where we talked about how we can get really caught up in moments of stress or anxiety. And then we have these tools that we all know work for us individually, that help us kind of like zoom out and come back to the bigger picture view of things. So Steve, you said take a deep breath.
Yeah, just kind of pause.
Check in.
Yeah. Take a breathe breath. Just think about it just for a moment and let it kind of just, your body just kind of just pause, you know. And I know that's hard sometimes. I know it's hard sometimes, okay?
Well, yeah, it's not easy. I mean, goodness.
If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Right. If it was easy, we wouldn't even have to talk about it, probably, you know.
No, it'd be one of those 12 steps, you know. That's hard to do.
But I love what you said, and you were with your description, you were saying, like, check in with the body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let it wash over you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't react. Just
because
let it wash over you. Yeah.
Once you do that, you kind of understand what the stress is doing to your body.
Mm-hmm.
Situation. Okay. Now, not completely, but at least you can learn to deal with it, in a sense. Maybe in that moment. Now it might come back again, but at least at that moment, you stop, you know, or pause, you pull back and you breathe and pray about it, and then go on.
Yeah, that
I was going to
pause.
go back to the point of where For the Future is the old hymn. I can't remember the whole thing, but it says, I don't know about whatever, but I know who holds tomorrow.
That's nice.
And that's the how I say, that's the ultimate. I know who holds tomorrow. It's not me. There's nobody in this world, but I do know who holds tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the thing. We come back to when we're feeling that motion sickness from being swept off into the future. We have these tools. We have these ways that we can kind of reset and reground. And they look different for each of us. And also there's something fundamentally the same about them, which is that they're this way of kind of landing in our bodies again and, you know, giving this essential comfort to them. So Penny calls a friend. Nan enjoys diving into a game or her crafts when that's available, right? When it's physically available to you. And Steve, you're doing all of this amazing creative work, but also taking a pause and checking in with your breath. And Dusty is playing pool. Dusty is making music. Heather?
Oh man, I have some quiet time with music that I enjoy, and movement in some way.
Yes. Nice. So
what about you?
I meditate a lot, and I love someone, I heard someone say it yesterday, and I can't remember the original, like the origin of this quote, but you know, the idea that that praying is asking God for help, and that meditating is listening for the answer. And I spend a lot of time listening for the answer, a lot of time. And that when I get real busy and anxious, and I feel like physically like I'm having a hard time sitting still, I realize that I need to spend some time just listening and quieting those voices that sometimes pretend like they know better. But then also, Heather, moving my body. I know those things are on two opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Getting real still and getting real busy with my body. And it's almost
and both
like
are
they
therapeutic.
meet. Yeah, they meet on the circle. It's all part of a continuum, right? So I have just enjoyed talking about these quotes with you guys and these themes with you so much. And it's really, as you can see, it's so not about Star Wars. It's really all about us and all about the wisdom that each one of us can offer, and ways that we can support each other, ways that we can support ourselves and our own experience. And yeah, so this may the force be with you. It's like that life force that's in me and that's in all of you. May you be aware of that energy that is holding us all and moving us all through this life, whether you call that energy God or something else, whatever you call that energy. Seems like we all recognize that it's in there, that it's part of us, and that we can connect to it anytime we want to. So yeah, not about Star Wars, but about Star Wars, you know? Thanks for playing with me, getting a little deep and philosophical.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's a philosophical day, a philosophical program.
And we learned about each other too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. If you need a baker or a crafter or woodworker or community organizer, we're your people, right?
Or a musician.
Yes.
Yeah,
So many gifts.
I agree. It's just been really great. Thank you, Emily. We always enjoy.
Blessing.
Yeah, it's good.
Thank you.
Well, I hope everybody gets to enjoy some beautiful outdoor weather before the skies open up. It's not so bad.
You think it's going to happen, Heather? You think it's going to open up?
Nah, maybe sprinkle a little, but it's not going to wash away any bullfrogs or anything. We're good. We're good. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to take my little dog for a walk, and we're going to walk off the French fries we just ate. So I'll see you guys later.
All right. Bye,
Thanks,
Beth.
everyone.
Bye,
I hope
everybody.
to see you soon. Bye.
See y'all.
Bye.